Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Coding 101 is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Coding 101 is brought to you by Lynda.com, the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, visit lynda.com/C101. That's lynda.com/C101. And by DigitalOcean. Simple and fast cloud hosting built for developers. Deploy an SSD cloud server in 55 seconds. Try it today for free. Visit DigitalOcean.com. And once you sign up, be sure to enter the promo code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. Today on Coding 101, it's the Twit API with PowerShell. Hello and welcome to Coding 101. It's the Twit show where we let you into the wonderful world of the Code Monkey and the Code Warrior. I'm Father Robert Ballester, the digital Jesuit. And of course, joining me is my super special co-host, Mr. Lou Maresca. He is a lead software developer at Microsoft. Lou, so good to have you back, my friend. How are things going up in the great land of Redmond?
It's great to be back. Yeah, lots of stuff changing around here. It's the year end, and they think they just like to throw stuff at us. So I've been very busy lately.
And as you can see, Lou has kept his title as Microsoft MVP Wrangler. And that is apt because we are bringing in two MVPs. You've seen them before. You love them. You know them. That's right. It's Sarah Dukevich and Adam Bertram. Let's start with Sarah. Sarah, you are our code warrior, but we decided to bring Adam in because you may remember the first module you did. He was so helpful in the chat room, and then he was so popular from the MVP episode that we just had to have ourselves some Bertram loving. How are you, Sarah?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to have Adam here with me because, the past couple episodes, I couldn't picture him without him. He's been awesome. That, and he can also be a stronger voice today since mine is slowly coming back from laryngitis.
What did you do? Concert?
No.
Concert. Yelling at kids?
Allergies.
Oh, allergies.
I wish I could say yelling at kids, but no, in this case, allergies.
Well, Adam, we bring in Adam Bertram because he's not just a substitute voice for Sarah, but also because he is a PowerShell MVP. He is not just a contributor to the world of PowerShell, but he is one of its visionaries. Adam, thank you for coming back on the Coding 101.
No problem. Thanks for having me back.
Before we jump into the episode, remember, we're going to be talking all about using PowerShell to access the Twit API for those folks out there who may want to do some heavy-duty automation. I did want to bring up a couple of PowerShell-centric stories. This first one is something that I saw on my Twitter feed this morning from Mr. Owen. You may remember him also from our MVP episode, about adding commandlets that can access the MPIO/GPIO on Internet of Things devices in Windows 10. Go ahead and bring up this article, Anthony. Now, I want to get your take on this. Sarah, Adam, you both deal with PowerShell. You both do a lot of automation. We were speaking about this a little bit before the show. Adam, you were saying that there might be a way to do this with the current kernel. Why would I want commandlets on, say, my Raspberry Pi?
Well, sometimes whenever PowerShell is expanding a lot from the Windows ecosystem and through the introduction of OMI. So right now you can manage network devices such as some switches and routers and things like that and various appliances. And I don't know anything about the Raspberry Pi in particular, but I was thinking that if there was a SIM provider, or that if the Windows 10, the Internet of Things edition, provided some kind of SIM interface, you may be able to use the built-in SIM instances like Get SIM Instance or Get SIM Session to be able to remotely manage those things.
Right, right. And of course, what they're talking about is the version of Windows 10 stripped of the UI, of course. It's just a smaller version of the kernel. You have pins, typically on Internet of Things, GPIO, MPIO, that allow you to access devices out in the real world. In this particular case, a Raspberry Pi, I can send either digital on or off, or PWM, sort of analog comparison signals, so that I can control things like servos and relays and tip transistors in order to turn devices on or off or set conditions. Sarah, this is not a typical way to use PowerShell, right? I mean, I know PowerShell is used for automation. We use it here at the Twit Studio at our TD desk. It's actually the thing that ingests the videos after we record every episode. But is it a new way to think of PowerShell as something that interacts with real-world devices?
I have not seen PowerShell interacting with hardware at that level before. Typically, I mean, we have a couple Raspberry Pis and Arduinos here at my house, and we're using things like C and some other languages. We're not using PowerShell. But if it were to go this route, that would be pretty cool to see.
Right. Lou, why would I want to do this? Why wouldn't I just say have Python on my Raspberry Pi? Because that does let me access the GPIO. What's the advantage of doing it with Windows 10 Internet of Things?
I think it depends on what ecosystem you're in. If you're used to a Windows environment and you want to do device management using PowerShell, it makes it easier for you just to kind of get that bootstrap into the process, I think. So I think for me, it would be much easier for me to start going and do device management, especially from IoT's perspective, if I had to use Microsoft technologies like C# or PowerShell. And so that's why I would say definitely jump into it. And I actually have seen this done working. People using it to device manage, whether it's to generate, backups of the device or to extract data or export data, that kind of thing. I've seen them use PowerShell scripts to do it. So it's actually a very powerful environment, especially for IoT devices.
Right. Well, I'm going to move on to a second story. This is a very interesting article about when we should and should not use PowerShell modules. Now, we could just go around the horn here and talk to our panelists about, what are the good use cases? But instead, Anthony, if you go ahead and show that link, you'll find that it was actually written by one of our guests today, Mr. Adam Bertram. Adam, why do we need a checklist on when and when not to use PowerShell modules?
Well, what I found is the reason I wrote that article in the first place is because I found multiple instances where people would start writing scripts, and they would write so many different scripts to do so many different things that they eventually lost track of the scripts that they were building in the first place. And also, whenever they would go to share those scripts, they would email it or FTP or Dropbox it or something, but then it wouldn't work right because there were some dependencies the script needed or some other thing. It wasn't a real good way to share it. A module allows you to kind of group up similar functionality into a single, it's technically still just a script, but it's a PSM1 file. But PowerShell treats it as a single entity where you can combine and batch up all this different functionality and functions and code into a single file, share one single file that does a lot of different things, and then that way you can easily share it. You can easily know where your code is and that sort of thing.
That sounds easy. When you explain it like that, it sounds, okay, yeah, that's exactly when you would use a module. But Sarah, we both know that this is one of those tensions you have as you're writing, between just writing code, just scripting out, and then making that decision, oh, you know what, this should probably be a module. I'm probably going to reuse this. I'm probably going to want to share this. Let's find out where I should make my breakpoints. This goes into the PowerShell module. What's your criteria? When do you decide that this piece of code now needs to become a module?
For me, it's one of those where if I'm going to write code that I know other people may find useful, such as creating the module to work with the Twit TV API, like we're going to do tonight, that's one of those where that's when I'm going to create a module. Another instance where I've created a module where I thought about it is so I created or published a book back in 2011. And in there I talk about providers, and I created a module for that, which allows us to access I believe it was the document store and the other stores, or the libraries through PowerShell. It was something that's like, it hasn't been done. May as well just create this so I can then redistribute it. And it turned out to be a big hit from what my friends were telling me.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those, can I see other people using this, and can I save other people time by doing it right?
Right. Well, there's actually another aspect to this. I mean, yes, anytime you want to share with other people, anytime you think that your script might become something that people will want to install in their base code, that's always a good time to turn into a module. But Lou, what about complexity? Because complexity is normally, in most languages, that's my measure of when something needs to be broken out, when the script or the function becomes so complicated that it's getting difficult to visualize how it's interacting with the rest of the code.
Yeah, to me, no piece of code is too small. I mean, sometimes the usefulness of a piece of code is overlooked by the original developer. But when they make it modular like this and they make it useful to somebody else, sometimes it's more useful to them than anything else. So there's that whole open and close principle that most object-oriented development languages have, where it's kind of open to extension but closed to changing. And so the idea is when you build a module in C# is you build it and then you give it out as a module, and then somebody can use it, and then they can also extend it, make it do other things. And so that's why the whole principle can even be applied to PowerShells. No matter how small the module, and no matter if it does something even so simple, you can. I think Adam just answered a question. I actually asked him a question about, can you have modules of modules, meaning another module might use another module. Then you have this chain of responsibility there, and it makes it much neater to share and to kind of deploy. So I think that's kind of where most of languages come from when you break down tasks into smaller pieces.
Adam, Lou tells us that no module is too small. Is he lying to us?
It's actually a question I still think about today. I just thought about that today because I had a script that was only maybe 10 lines long, but it had the potential to do so much more. So what I was working on was something to manipulate an FTP client actually, and I had a get FTP settings commandlet or a function. I had a set FTP settings function, and eventually I thought, well, if I just do a little bit more work, I can actually make this into a really good module. So good modules always have the CRUD, the typical developer CRUD methodology that create, read, update, and delete. So every good module is kind of built around a central object. So in this instance, if I was messing with like an IIS FTP server, a good module's functions would be get IIS FTP server, set IIS FTP server, remove, and set or create. No, you get the point. But that's what good module is about. Is sort of similar to objects. You have your methods, your sort of methods, which are your verbs, so your get, set, update, and delete. And if you build it right, you can kind of build it all around those that different functionality and really provide a really good piece of code to manage everything there is to know about a particular function.
I don't want to spend too long in the banter section because we do need to get into some heavy PowerShell API wrangling. But since we've got our PowerShell MVPs here, I do have one more story I want to touch on. And Sarah, let me throw this to you first. This is from the MSDN blog. Anthony, if you go to that link, about PowerShell language support for Visual Studio Code. Now,
yes.
why would I want this? What does this give me?
Okay, so Anthony, can you show my GoToMeeting? Thank you, sir. So this is Visual Studio Code. And if you haven't heard about it, so Microsoft has this editor to edit files of all various languages, and it's also available on multiple platforms. So you can run it on Linux, you can run it on Mac OS, you can run it on Windows. So it's similar to other editors out there, such as like Atom.io, where you have cross-platform encoding. But then take a look at this. So if we can, there it goes. You can see this is Visual Studio Code and some of the code that we're going to be looking at today. We've got syntax highlighting, we've got line numbers, and I don't have to worry about the heavy overhead that I might see in, say, like an ISE. I'm not loading modules, I'm just writing code. I can focus on code. So the developer in me says, this is nice because it takes out a lot of the noise. It takes out things, and I can just do this. But I can also open other files. So I could say something like, okay, maybe I want to see like a Python file. So if I go to there, you can see, well, that's a boring Python file, but again, syntax highlighting there. So what's nice about having PowerShell in Visual Studio Code is the fact that it's something lightweight. It's something for me to work with. And I can run this on my laptop right now, which is running Windows 10. That is soon to be a Linux machine. I can run this on my new laptop that'll be here in a couple of weeks. That will be running Windows 10, so I can run this on multiple platforms. And my Mac friends who give me a hard time about not having a Mac, they can run this too.
Nice. Lou, what about it? Is this something that you're going to be adding to your desktop arsenal?
Yeah, I think I have a MacBook at home, and what I like to do is sometimes I'll open up a piece of code that somebody sends me or links to, and I can open it right in Visual Studio Code. I can look at my C# code. It's formatted correctly. I can even make some changes and send it back. I can use remote compiling in the cloud. using the new compiler as a service. So I think there's a lot of power behind Visual Studio Code, even though it's a very simple unzip and use sort of thing. So it works really well with PowerShell too. Like Sarah was saying, you can use it on Windows, and then I can just immediately jump over and be using it in OS X. Granted, I can't execute the PowerShell scripts on OS X, but again, I can still edit the files and redeploy them to a Windows machine if I wanted to. So it makes it really useful. So I think it's very powerful, and it's very lightweight compared to just standard Visual Studio install that might take you 30 minutes to install. So I think this is it's a really easy package to kind of get used to.
Last words to you, Adam, as an MVP. Is this something that you could see the PowerShell community embracing?
Yes, I've actually had a couple of conversations with David Wilson, the guy on the PowerShell team behind Visual Studio Code, and one of the questions that I posed to him was, how come this kind of came about? My original question was, the ISE versus Visual Studio Code, where is that going to go? And he didn't specifically tell me, but right now they're working on both platforms, so you will see more involvement in Visual Studio Code and also some enhancements and improvements in the ISE as well. Visual Studio Code, from what I've used of it, it's really nice. It does the nice, your tabbing and indenting and your color highlighting and syntax highlighting and that sort of thing. It's a really nice tool. I suggest anybody doing not just PowerShell, but there's a lot of different plugins in it that can do the same thing as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been fun, but it looks like it's time to head into the meat of the episode. We're going to be using PowerShell to access the TWiT API. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a moment to thank the first sponsor of this episode of Coding 101. Now, we like doing Coding 101. We like doing shows on the TWiT TV network where we get to teach you things. But we understand that we will never have enough time to give you the in-depth look at the topics that we bring up. Yes, we can show you what a programming language looks like. Yes, we can show you how to assemble things on know-how. But when it comes down to it, you need a place that has a repository of knowledge, a place that you can go to reference. And that place is lynda.com. Now, lynda.com is for the problem solvers. It's for the curious. It's for the makers, for the doers, for the people who want to make things happen. Maybe you want to learn how to develop an app or take better photos or sharpen your Excel skills. Well, lynda.com has everything that you need to feed your curious mind. Lynda's latest courses include iOS 9 app extensions, developing Microsoft SQL Server 2014 databases, and techniques for developing secure software, which is taught by Mr. Rue, a Penn State faculty member teaching cybersecurity and information technology. In this course, he'll teach you how to analyze and avoid different kinds of security threats, design secure software, and use best practices to secure your sensitive data. This is the kind of knowledge that you get with lynda.com. It's both reference and information that stretches your current knowledge base. With a lynda.com membership, you can watch and learn from top experts who are passionate about teaching. You can stream thousands of video courses on demand, and you get to learn on your own schedule. You can take notes, you can make a playlist, you get to, design the courses for you rather than having it done the other way around. I really love the fact that they've got course transcripts, because course transcripts means that if you have a specific question about, say, a subject that you already know, but you've forgotten a few bits and pieces that you might need, rather than sitting through an entire lesson, you just jump straight to that part of the video that answers the question that you have. That's what lynda.com lets you do, have immediate access to the knowledge that you need. You can also share your playlists with friends, which means you can ask your friends, your community, to join you in your love of learning. Folks, if you like knowledge, you're going to love lynda.com. Your lynda.com membership gives you unlimited access to training on hundreds of topics, all for one low flat rate. Whether you're looking to become an expert, you're passionate about a hobby, or you just want to learn something new, I want you to visit lynda.com/C101 and sign up for your free 10-day trial. That's lynda.com, lynda.com/C101. And we thank lynda.com for their support of Coding 101. Let's get back into the action. Sarah, when you last left us, we were just starting to play around with PowerShell modules. We were just starting to look at the different, functions and features that we could access, including destroying our computer's registry. But now we want to do something more constructive. We want to access the TWiT API. What's the first step?
First step is looking at the TWiT API documentation. And there's a reason why I say that. So let's go ahead and flip over. Thank you. So the TWiT TV API is very well documented over here on the site, apiary.io. So we've got the links here that we'll make sure are included in the show notes. But while I was looking at this for our episode, there were a few things that I wanted to do for you. I want to get you guys started with creating your own PowerShell module. I want to make sure you guys have two different functions to work with. Functions that take in parameters and functions that don't take parameters. This will give you the starting framework for you to expand upon this module for your needs. So this is just a little teaser. I hope you guys will do your homework afterwards. So when I was looking at this list, go back to the API list, I was looking along this left-hand side here to see what some of our categories are. Whoa. Let me bring them back. There we go. And so I was looking at, specifically, I figured, well, let's do something with shows and episodes. Let's take a look at the list of all the shows that are available on Twit TV, plus any episodes for a particular show. So let's go ahead and create this. Now, before we get into creating our module, whenever I create a module and I have an API, there are a couple things I'm looking for in the documentation. One is, what are the endpoints? Two, what do I need in order to send to it? So I'm going to scroll down and see that my endpoints, first I have to use HTTPS. And then I see that they have an example here. So I'm going to close this sidebar and look at their example. So basically what the example here is showing is that I have to send some headers. Just send some headers, including my app ID and my app key, which I can get to, I get those assigned via the URL I posted in the chat channel. And then I can call an endpoint. An endpoint is basically a web service that exposes, will give me back data if I hit it properly. There are other things in here like error messages, stuff like that. But we're going to actually just jump into writing code a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the PowerShell ISE. So basically, if in Windows 10, I can press start and type ISE, and that'll start it up. I can do that. Let's see what it does. That guy starts low font, so I'm going to close that guy and open the guy who I've got the font check already done on. I should be able to see. Can you guys see that okay? Text-wise?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay.
It's the miracles of the TriCaster.
Thank you, guys. All right, so as I mentioned, we were looking at the API documentation, and we noticed a few things to do. So we need to get our app ID and our app key. I've already copied and pasted those into a file that you guys don't see on the screen. I'm going to copy and paste them here so you guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm storing these in variables. Now, to appease Adam, I'm going to change these to single quotes.
Yay.
Now, there's a reason for that. And Adam and I were going back and forth about single quotes and double quotes this afternoon. Basically, PowerShell, if there's double quotes, PowerShell can manipulate the string if you put variable names, etc. in there. So to keep his PowerShell mind happy, this is what we're going to do. We did mention that the API needs to have a particular header. So we're going to say that, first of all, it has what we call an accept header. And this is the particular format that it needs. And then what I'm going to do, and I'll let Adam tell you a little more of what this is, I'm going to get our headers and package them up. So Adam, you want to tell them what's going on there, what that is?
Sure. Well, what you'll see down a little bit farther is that headers variable there is needed by the invoke REST method commandlet. And that invoke REST method commandlet has I believe it's the parameter is called headers. And what Sarah sent me this code before the show, and we're going over. Originally, she was using a .NET, I call it a Devi method of coding, to where she would create a .NET object, a dictionary object, and then would add the keys in there, and it worked. I'm sure it worked fine. It's just not something that I was used to seeing, and I thought, a hash table is almost exactly like a dictionary object in PowerShell. And somebody that's not a developer, such as myself, an IT pro, probably wouldn't understand what she was doing. So I thought an easier approach would be to use a hash table and put the keys in there. So that's what you're seeing there in that headers variable.
Nice. Okay. We are going to destroy this key later on. So don't do anything with it.
No, that's fine. These guys have been have been worn before. So yeah, and what's nice about a hash table is that it is simply a key value pair. So it is simply, this is my key, this is an accept, this is the value I expect in there. This is the key for the app ID. We're going to take a look at how this gets sent over. Hold on. All right, so like I had mentioned, we looked at the API and I saw stuff about episodes and shows. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create two functions. Notice when I type function, going with the PowerShell naming, I want to make sure, since we're getting things back, that I'm just going to do get dash. And then I'm going to put in, because it's twit, I want to make this so that this is a recognizable name. I'm going to do it like this. I'm also going to do a function for episode. So this is when I'm creating modules and looking at endpoints of an API, for example, I'm going to look at what do I want to extend, and I'm just going to create these functions, just these placeholders.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do is...
Sarah, when you're mapping out the logic for your script, is that how you do it? You use the placeholders to remind you of, okay, I want these particular modules to do these particular things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I actually do is not only do I put these functions in here, but I go so far as to usually say something in comments. So I'll say gets list of shows on Twit TV. And then what I'll say here is that I'm going to get list of episodes for a particular show. So I actually put my goals in comments when I'm starting out, whether I'm doing PowerShell or C# or any other language. When I'm working with methods like this, I'm putting comments in there to remind me what exactly was I intending to do with this. Make sense?
That absolutely makes sense.
All right. All right, so now, what's that? Yeah, it's called pseudocode. So basically, and it's something that working with my apprentices at the Software Guild, we encourage pseudocode. We tell them, if you can't solve the problem in plain English, you're not going to solve the problem in code. You have to be able to solve it in plain English first. You have to be able to do this.
Well, it just helps you when you're finally writing that function. If you have the recall to your placeholders, to your pseudocode, you're like, okay, that's right. It needs to do this. This is the limit of the scope. In fact, I usually go a step further, and not only do I give it a general description of what it does, I'll also give it a bit more meat to say, okay, I don't want it to do this. That will be handled by another function. Because as it gets larger and larger and larger, it becomes very confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
Okay, so next we're going to actually put some content into our Get Twit show. And I'll let Adam talk as I'm putting this in here. You want to tell him about what commandlet binding and param are, and these are the empty ones.
Oh, sure. In PowerShell, you have two kinds of functions. The first is a basic function, and that's what you just saw before Sarah put in the commandlet binding. So a basic function is just you have the function declaration, and then the name of the function, and then your curly brackets. That's what a basic function is. And that's what you would think of as just like a function in any other language that you know or are familiar with. However, PowerShell has this concept of advanced functions. And an advanced function is, it mimics an actual built-in compiled commandlet. So if a developer were to come in in C# and develop a commandlet or a binary module, which we might discuss here in a minute, that gives you a lot of power and flexibility. So you have a lot of debugging things you can do in it, some what-if support. You have a lot of confirm. There's a lot of different parameters and things you can do, that functionality that come built in if you just build an advanced function. And in order to build that advanced function, you need to just have that commandlet binding keyword there that Sarah has with the param declaration. And that actually, right out of the box, gives you advanced function capabilities.
All right.
Thank you, sir. And right now on line 19, we're looking at the invoke REST method commandlet. What this is used for is to call out to RESTful services, so services that will usually give us back XML or JSON. And so it's going to call out there and say, hey, go to this URL, this endpoint, And by the way, I'm including these headers that we declared up above. So this app ID, this app key. So what this is going to do is it's going to go straight to this endpoint and get all of the shows that are available on twit.tv, which is fine for what we need.
Now, how is this handling storage?
Everything is going in memory at the moment.
Because I was just thinking, eventually someone's probably going to want to use PowerShell to drive the back end for their Twit app. PowerShell would be a nice way to sort of brute force, just have simple command automation to go to the Twit API every minute or hour or whatever it might be and pull down episodes, pull down updates to our programming, and then store it somewhere else, not in memory, so that it can be persistent for clients to access. Now, we don't have to go to that now, but is that relatively simple in PowerShell?
I would think it's doable. I don't know to what degree of simplicity, though.
Adam, you look like that's not the way you'd want to do it.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm saying it's simple is a relative term.
Okay.
It's like, how do you put that delicately?
Yes. It just depends on what the API comes back. Is it going to be a container that has is going to be an MP4 or an MP3? Really, if it just comes back with just a file like that, really it wouldn't be that difficult. You would just bring it down, and then you could just save it as wherever you want on the file system.
Well, they would even have to save the MP4s. I mean, basically all they're doing is they're saving the links. And then the clients can access directly off of our content.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that wouldn't be a big deal.
CDNs, yep.
Yeah. So it's not a lot of data. I mean, it's basically pulling down JSON blobs and then sorting them out so that they don't have to continually hit our API. And one of the things that we've done is our API keys are limited to, Patrick Delahanty will probably correct me on this, I think it's 5 queries per minute. Patrick, shout from your office if that's right. And then past that, you'll time out until you hit your next allotment. So we've been telling people you cannot build your client, you cannot build your app to hit our Twit API with your API key. That's a horrible, horrible idea. But if they could automate a way to just have those downloaded to their server, that works.
Yeah, I mean, you could technically use the file out module or whatever in PowerShell and just write the JSON directly to disk. But not necessarily the best option, because then you'd have to load those JSON blobs up every time you wanted to kind of query through them. So it'd be kind of tough to do. So you might want to store it as something else other than just the flat files.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry, I digress too much. Take us back in, Sarah.
Alrighty. So now that we have a function created, a advanced one, of course, now we're going to do something a little more important that always gets lacking, and that's add some help to it. Because documentation, while it gets overlooked, is actually pretty crucial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste a big chunk, and it needs to go before this commandlet binding. Oop, like that. Let's see, copy over? Okay. Awesome. So just so you guys can see how this works. So we've got the less than and a pound and it ends by a pound and a greater than. This is what they call comment-based help. And there will be a link to that in the show notes as well. And it's also so this module is available for download, and you'll have that link as well, so you guys can see the link to comment-based help. But basically what this shows is synopsis, a description. Inputs and outputs are used somewhere. I haven't figured out just where yet. So I put a lot of that in description, and then a link. And so I've linked to the endpoint that I'm calling. That way you can get more description about the objects that are coming back. Rather than me have to write that documentation. Somebody already did. Thank you to whoever wrote that. So just go to that link instead.
Partially, that's Patrick Delahanty. He won't take credit for it, but I'll give it to him.
Well, Patrick rocks, but we already know that because he's been on the show quite a few times too.
Absolutely. Okay, so now here's actually a question I had about PowerShell. We have been showing people how to access the API through, say, C#, which is nice because it gives us the ability to get that JSON blob back and then run it through a JSON parser. What's the process for doing it in PowerShell? Because that sounds like it might be a little bit different.
So getting back to JSON and how to handle it with PowerShell?
Right.
So I love PowerShell for this, in that everything comes back as an object. And so we can manipulate it with objects. After we create these I can show you what that looks like coming back. Or I can technically, let's do this. I'm going to import module twit API since I already have the module pre-written, just so you guys can see what comes back. So I'm going to create a variable shows, and I'm going to say get twit show, and press enter. And we'll take a look at what shows looks like. Actually, it might not let me do it that way. So it's taking its time. It's hitting the API. API is going to cry because everybody's going to hit this. But I stored it in a variable, so that way I could actually say, okay, shows. And if I press enter, notice this is what comes back from the API.
Wow. Okay, so you are getting the pure JSON blob.
And it tells me it's a number of shows, and then I have all the shows in the shows blob. Now, what's nice about PowerShell is I can do something like this. So I'm going to bring up my command window a minute, and I'm going to say...
Sarah, real quick, that's called what do they call that, though? That's called a representation object? What is it actually called that's representing the JSON blob?
This is probably just a general PowerShell object. The best way I can do it is do $shows, and I'm going to pipe it to get member. So if you guys remember in the earlier episodes, probably episode 104 or 204 in PowerShell, one of the most useful commandlets to know is get member. What this does is this will tell us all the properties on that object. So if I press enter, you can see that this is the type. It's called a PS custom object. So what PowerShell does with the JSON object is it tosses it into its own custom object. And it has stuff under the covers apparently that can read it. And we see things like there's the count property, there's the shows property. I can take this one step further now. Watch this. I can say shows.shows pipe get member. And I'm spelling out get member. You can do -gm. The reason why I do get member spelled out is because, well, you guys are still learning. This is 101, right? Now, when I do get member, you can see all sorts of other properties for each show. You can see that there's a label. You can see there's an ID. What's nice about the definition is you can see samples of values, so you have a little idea of what you're pulling.
That's very, very cool. I like that. Oh. Hey, Lou, why did we just do this? We didn't need to use that JSON parser.
Don't we wish every language has JSON or object or type variants built into it, right?
Now, let's make it clear. Sarah, that's built into PowerShell. That's not a script you wrote.
No, that's why I said it's doing something under the covers. I will leave it as it's magic because I personally have no idea what they're doing. So I don't know if Adam has some craziness.
It takes the JSON blob, it puts it into an object, and then it just sorts it for you inside that object. You can
absolutely, and I can do all sorts of manipulation. If I could do all my JSON work in PowerShell and get rid of like JavaScript and C# and Java, I would gladly do that because this is so much easier.
Okay, I was kind of joking about making a backend server with PowerShell for the API, but now I actually want to see someone do it. Adam?
Oh, it's already been done.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Well, they even have the convert from and convert to JSON. So if you have a PS custom object, and you can easily just convert it right to JSON or convert it from JSON back and forth with just a function.
That's ridiculous. So instead of having to parse the JSON into individual fields, this keeps it as a blob. It keeps it as an object, and then I can modify the object and push the object back out as a JSON blob.
Yep.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. All right, I want to continue because we got a little bit more to go on the Twit API. But before we go, let's go ahead and thank the second sponsor of this episode of Coding 101. Now, you've heard me talk about DigitalOcean before. It is the easiest way to get up and running. If you need to host a project, if you need to put up an app, if you need to put up a back-end service, you get to put it into a droplet. A droplet is a tiny little virtual server that pretty much lets you do anything you want with root access. But did you know that DigitalOcean is also a really good place for people who just want to start small projects? Want to push up a WordPress blog? You could do that with DigitalOcean. Want to play with Drupal? You could do that with DigitalOcean. Do you want to play with creating your backend for your Twit API app? You can do that. Whether you're an experienced code warrior or you're just getting started, you do need flexible, reliable, and affordable hosting. We all know that. Well, DigitalOcean gives you that with their droplets, and because they give you full root access, it means that you don't have to spend a lot of time tripping around the restrictions that are placed on you. It's built for developers, by developers, and it's used by over 400,000 of them, including me. You can deploy and configure your droplets via a streamlined control panel or a simple API, and you get to choose your OS. Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, CoreOS, FreeBSD. They've also got a one-click install that lets you quickly deploy apps like Django, Docker, Drupal, LAMP, GitLab, MediaWiki, Node.js, WordPress, Ghost, Magento, OwnCloud, Ruby on Rails, and more. All their servers are built on hex-core machines with dedicated ECC memory and RAID SSD storage. And their servers can have up to 20 CPUs, 64 gigabytes of memory, and 640 gigabytes of SSD storage space. So you know it's scalable. Now, they've got auto backups and snapshots, so they'll take care of all that scut work, the stuff you don't want to do. You just have to worry about deploying your app and making sure it's as good as you want it to be. They give you full-featured DNS management with HTML5 plus SSH, SFTP, KVM, VNC for virtual desktops, 99.99% uptime, and gigabit speeds around the world. All of that's great. I mean, that's the technology, and the technology behind DigitalOcean is impressive. But what I really like is the fact that they've got a very strong and active community, a user base, people who do this for a living, who depend on DigitalOcean for their livelihood, which means you're going to get real-world answers to your question. Folks, there's really no reason not to use DigitalOcean. You can deploy your SSD cloud server in as little as 55 seconds. Now, DigitalOcean has incredibly affordable and straightforward pricing with servers starting at just $5 per month. There's also hourly pricing available in case you want to stand something up just for a while to see if it'll actually exist in the real world. It starts at less than a penny an hour. But we're going to make it so that you can get started today and deploy your SSD cloud server for free. That's right, for nothing. Visit DigitalOcean.com and create an account. Once you confirm your email and account information, go to the billing section and enter the promo code C101 for a free $10 credit. That's plenty to get started and explore what DigitalOcean can do for you. That's DigitalOcean.com, DigitalOcean.com. And once you sign up, enter the code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. We're back with Sadukie. That's right, it's Sarah and Adam who have just, well, they've made me question why I haven't been programming in PowerShell all these years.
You're missing out, Padre.
I've been missing out. But Sarah, keep us going. So we just learned how incredibly efficient and how well PowerShell handles JSON blobs. Now, what do I do once I've got that blob?
Okay. So once you got that blob, you can do whatever you want with it. So again, that was my shows. Shows. This is the blob. This is all the information I pulled from the API. And this is just from the commandlet that we created. Just so you guys know, this is what this does. So pretty cool. For us at this point, we can extract the data and do whatever we want with it. Whether it's pulling out text and writing it to a file to play with later, whether it's pushing this stuff into a database, whether it's pushing it into a database and then having a website pull that information live. Just some of the many things you can do. But let's go ahead and we looked at a commandlet with just no parameters. I want to show you guys how to create one with parameters as well. Ready to jump into it?
Jump in.
All right. So this function getTwitEpisode. I'm actually going to take these parentheses out. So like I said, when I was laying out the whole idea of this module, I create the placeholder. But we got to say a little bit more here.
Okay.
We got to add a parameter, but because we're doing Adam's cool, fancy way of advanced stuff, this is how it works.
Fancy.
Again, we've got all sorts of code coming in. So I'm going to put that in here. Paste that, scroll it up so you guys can see it. Scroll this guy down a little bit. Make sure, there we go. Fancy smancy. So this is getTwitEpisode. Again, there's that commandlet binding, only this time now, lines 45 to 49 are, hey, we have a parameter. Line 46 is our way of saying that you have to include this parameter. You can't run this commandlet without it. This validate not null or empty is to make sure that the show ID is not coming in as a null or empty thing. It better be filled in. And 48 says, oh yeah, by the way, this is a number. This is an integer that we're looking to see here. So this is how we specify parameters in our functions for our commandlets. So if I had multiple parameters, I could go ahead and put them in here. But for this particular example, I figure, okay, we've got a list of episodes for a particular show. And so that's what I've got here. So I've got this invoke REST method we call. What's nice about the API is you have all sorts of filtering and you do it all within the URL. This is all going through GET. So filter shows show ID. Again, there's those headers that we used earlier. Now, just like last time, I also want to see help files or help text. Because again, documentation is key. So this module right now is running here on my desktop. You guys, when you download my module onto your machines, you're going to be like, well, how does this work? What does it do? So that's why we put help in there. And I'm going to paste this right above my command line binding. Now we've got the same thing with our synopsis. We've got our description, inputs and outputs. Again, I put them in there because I imagine something's going to use it. But then we also have examples. And we're going to take a look at what this looks like here in a minute. But just so you guys can see what it looks like in terms of code, this is what we've got. So I've got a sample of how to call the commandlet with the parameter and a specific parameter ID. This is the ID for coding 101. And I could actually run this guide down here so you guys can see what this looks like. I'm going to clear this screen out. There we go. And when I run that, it's running, as we can see down here below. Notice there are 93 episodes of Coding 101.
Nice.
Last one was PowerShell 3 of 4. And so, again, just like the other endpoint, we've got a count, and then we've got an object. So I could do, if I did the same thing here, where let's say I said episodes equals, get twit, and I can do tab completion, more tab completion, like that. So if I look at episodes, just press center, you guys can see all this stuff scroll by. And there it goes.
Oh.
This is all the data that's in that
object
for Coding 101. Yeah.
And it's so neat. Oh my god! I'm losing my seriously. I'm still losing my mind over that. That's so nice.
Know you are. This is
Very
awesome.
useful.
Oh,
what was your life like?
Lou, why weren't we doing this before? I don't get it. Oh wow. And I can modify that object any way I want.
Oh sure. Sure. Once you store it here, you can do whatever you want to it. You're not going to change anything on the server. These are all just gets. It says, give me data. We're not pushing anything back up there. But, yeah.
This would be a good way, if we do what Padre just said, was you develop your own API. You can bring it down and then modify it a little bit away and present that in a different way to the users of your own custom API.
Right. I'm trying to think about how that works. So if I got PowerShell running on my back end, I've got these JSON blobs coming down into these objects. I have every way to modify the object I want. And then I can push the JSON blob back up to my own website, and that's what my clients hit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yes. That took like 16 different steps that I was going to do out of the way. Thank you.
Or why not just build a web server out of PowerShell? It's pretty easy.
Wait, I can do that? I didn't know I could do that. Really, I can do that?
You can do that too, yes.
So I could just serve out those JSON blobs?
Yep, directly.
Okay, now I really want commandlets on a Raspberry Pi. I want to see if that can handle it. Well, I mean, that would be
Posh server.
Actually, that would be an incredible project. Make this becomes the server for your Twit API. It uses PowerShell commandlets to pull down those JSONs and then serve it up to whoever I want.
I expect that on GitHub by next week.
Okay. I may be in a turkey coma, but that's something I'm definitely going to work on. I seriously, I am speechless. I had no idea it was this powerful. I mean, people have been telling me for a while that PowerShell it's powerful, and I see it because we've been using it here in the Twit TV studio for automation, for process automation. But I had no idea it could do this. Mm-hmm. Lou, seriously, I talk about something because I'm wrapping my head around this.
Talk about something. So one thing that the PowerShell will continue to do is continue to grow and get more powerful. I think like Adam was saying, you can run your own web server. Soon you'll be able to run devices. Soon you'll be able to control containers and deploy things and build out Docker instances and so on and so forth. So I think you're starting to get just the beginning of how powerful PowerShell is. So I think it's really good to get the insights into what the fundamentals are, and then just try it yourself.
I really want to see, Adam, can you give me a bit more of a preview on using PowerShell with containers? Because that's the big thing right now. Once we get the security sorted out, containers is where all of our data centers, in fact, all of our home appliances are going to be headed. You want everything in a container because it can run on basically anything. What will I be able to do with my containers using PowerShell?
Well, right now it's so early on, you can do a few things. I mean, you can't, I'm not real familiar with the support, but I know based on the content that I've read and what I do know about containers is right now you can support, you can manage Docker containers, you can manage Hyper-V containers. You can do a lot of different things with PowerShell now, especially with Server 2016 TP4, right. I think, is out now. That's the primary way. So you'll see that same thing goes with like how Office 365 was back in the day. You know, before the GUI, they had PowerShell commands to do everything, and they slowly started adding more GUI support for more things. That's what you see with containers. So you'll see a lot of PowerShell support at first, and then once they have the PowerShell support, then they start adding on GUI features and things to better manage the containers and whatever the product is.
Sarah, seriously, okay, that actually looks really, really simple. We're going to make all of this code available, right? Your scripts will be available. We've been having difficulty, so what I'm going to use, I'm just going to use your link. We're going to make sure your link is in the show notes so people can download this directly. Now, let me ask you, we like to send people home with a little bit of homework. What do you want to see them do with your script?
I want to see them add more commandlets using these as a guide. I have two more things I have to show to wrap it up.
Right.
Before we do it, but yeah, your homework's going to be to expand on this. Now we've got a commandlet with parameters, a commandlet without parameters, and consume all the APIs. Start with Twit API and go from there.
All the APIs.
All the APIs. So my last two things, the first one is this export module member, dash function, get dash star. What this allows us to do is it says, hey, I've got a module of things, export all of the commandlets that are get dash star. That way we can use everything that's being packaged in here. And then the final thing, what makes it a module is when we do the save. So if I go up to File and tell it Save As, I'm going to save this in my Coding 101 Twit API folder, which I know is in my PS modules. And I'm just going to call this Twit API 2. And the reason why I say Twit API 2 is because, well, Twit API 1 is the one that's loaded and working. I don't want to kill that. But if I save it as a .psm1, that is a PowerShell module file. And that's what makes it a script module.
Right.
Save it. Now that that's saved, you should be able to come into here. I'm going to clear this to give us some room. Get module dash list available. We talked about this in a previous episode. So this is going to do its thing, scan the computer, find all the modules.
That first time it gave us a ridiculously large list. I think this, you cut it down so we're not inundated.
Yeah. And in this case, I think it's just not seeing my Twit API 2. Twit API and Twit API 2 are probably showing the same kind of deal.
Right.
But it should appear here, and then you can do import module Twit API. And just so you guys can see how the help files are there, I just wanted to show you guys that one more time so you can see. So I can say get help, get was it Twit episodes? Twit episode. If I press enter, so all of our commands, look, they map down to something like this, where you can see there's synopsis, there's syntax, there's description, related links, all there. This particular one, I know I can do get help dash Twit episode dash examples and press enter, and you can see my examples. The formatting is a little off because example 2 has multiple lines to it, but it talks you through the steps for how to get all the episodes for Coding 101. Adam and I, again, we're talking about the double quotes and single quotes. You could also use single quotes there for Coding 101. It's just I come from a world of languages where single quotes are with characters, double quotes are with strings, and so sometimes I can't shed those behaviors.
I don't know, Sarah. I've heard that wars have started over less than single quotes versus double quotes. So
semicolons and curly braces start wars too.
Adam, is there anything that you want to add? I mean, I thank you very much for bringing this to us. I cannot tell you how impressed I am. I wish we had started with this as a first language on Coding 101, because this is something that everybody has. If you've got a Windows box, you've got PowerShell on it right now. What bit of advice would you want to hand to the audience who's going to be taking Sarah's modules, taking them home, and trying to access all of the APIs?
Well, the first piece of advice I would have would be, just like Sarah said, how you learn anything is with, especially with PowerShell, is just tinkering around. Read the documentation, see what's possible. Since the API uses, you can do a lot of filtering with the URLs. What I would first do is try to mess with that, create functions that build various URLs. You don't even have to run invoke REST method. Once you have a string with just a URL in it and then properly formatted with the proper parameters in there, then it's just a matter of passing that to invoke REST method, because it does all the hard work. So I think a really good next step would be to create a set of functions that just build various strings, just the URLs that you can then pass right to invoke REST method to grab whatever you need.
Fantastic. Lou, is there any wisdom that you'd like to impart? I mean, we unfortunately we're going to be losing our MVP, so you will no longer be the MVP Wrangler. But before we send Sarah and Adam off into the PowerShell ether, what do you want the audience to keep?
Use the PowerShell MVPs for information, because Adam and Sarah are awesome uses of information around PowerShell. So feel free to reach out to them. They're active on Twitter, and they're active on, like, Adam has a great blog post about PowerShell. So if you're just still learning and you want to learn a whole bunch of other things, it's always good to reach out to the community and just try things out. And also, one thing to add to the homework is find a way to store the JSON blob, so you can just you can keep picking it back up and reusing it, and going out to get different shows at different times, that kind of thing. That would be also a useful module to build.
Folks, I'm afraid we're at the end of this episode of Coding 101. I'm still a little bit stunned. I did not expect it to be that simple. I did not expect it to be that easy, but it is. I want to thank so much our co-code warriors, Sarah Dukevich and Adam Bertram. Sarah, of course, is at Sadukie, at SADUKIE on Twitter. Follow her. She's the owner of Cleveland Tech Events, an all-around good person. You know what? We have to see you more on the Twit TV network. We've gotten such good response. People like you. People love the fact that you know your stuff. And even though you like double quotes even more than single quotes,
I won't hold it against her.
We won't hold that against you.
I'm a dab. I can't help it.
Is there another place that you would like the audience to go to find your work?
Besides on Twitter, you guys can follow me on codinggeekette.com. That's where I blog about all things going on in my life, whether it's technical or with my apprentices or what other craziness I may run into. Maybe I'll start a single quotes versus double quotes war over there.
Wait, this could be a holy war. And of course, Adam Bertram, who is twitter.com/adbertram, ADBERTRAM. He is a PowerShell MVP. I'm sure we will see him again on the Twit TV network. But where can people go to find your work?
Well, other than Twitter, I'm on adamtheautomator.com, where I blog about just about everything automation and PowerShell.
Yeah, there you go. And finally, of course, Lou Maresca. Lou, I wouldn't want to do Coding 101 without you. It's always so much fun, everything you bring to the show. Where can people go if they want to find out about you, about CRM Dynamics, which is the Microsoft team that you're part of, or what you'll be doing this holiday season?
Well, we're going to be expanding on our, what did we call it last year, our little helper, our Santa's Little Helper application, so we can get some deals for Black Friday. So check out the C# module that we talked about. I don't remember what number it was, but it was a great module about basically went out all the retailers and pulled down all the prices, and I was able to store the prices and stuff. So I've been expanding on that to find all the deals this year. So that's what I'm doing for this week. But you can always find me on Twitter at LouMM, and of course all my work on CRM is crm.dynamics.com.
Folks, that's how you know a real geek. He doesn't go to Black Friday. He just programs a service to do it for him.
PowerShell.
And actually, I wonder if we could do Santa's Little Helper in PowerShell.
Oh, yeah.
That might be fun. That might be fun.
That is Lou's homework. That is your homework.
Lou, you now have your homework. Folks, we want to thank you for joining us for Coding 101. Don't forget that we do this show every Monday, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's, at live.twit.tv. If you watch us live, go ahead and jump into the chat room at irc.twit.tv. It's a great way to talk to us during the show, get some feedback, and maybe interject your own opinion into the episode. In fact, that's how Adam Bertram got onto these episodes. He was in the chat room for Sadukie's first episodes, and we thought, hey, you know what? This guy needs to be on the stream. Also, don't forget that you can go to our Twit show page at twit.tv/code. What will happen there is you'll find the links to Sadukie's a module. So if you want to download it, I'm actually going to do it myself. Make sure that the link goes in so that you can go straight in and download all the code that you need. You don't have to write it from the screen. Finally, I want to thank everyone here at the Brick House who makes this show possible. Of course, to Lisa and to Leo and my TD, who today is Anthony. Anthony, can you say hello to the
everybody
audience? Now, Anthony, what do you do here?
Oh, just a little bit of everything. TD, editing, graphics, you name it.
Yeah,
It's in the dark.
And it's in the dark.
I like the dark.
Until next time, I'm Father Robert Balliser. This has been Coding 101. And Lou, how do we end every show?
End of line.